Welcome everybody to Dallas Summer Musical's weekly masterclass presented by the Education and Community Partnerships Department. My name is Seth Johnson and I'll be your moderator for this event. We have a really exciting lineup today. Super excited to be talking about lighting design with two masters here, and I am going to throw it over to Eric in just a second to introduce himself and talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing today. Just a few reminders, please remain on mute until our question and answer portion of the masterclass. And then we'll either see you raise your hand or unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question. And then we'll move forward that way. And yeah, if you have any questions during the lecture portion, you can definitely leave them in the chat window and we'll answer those as soon as we get to the question and answer portion.
Also, feel free to show those beautiful faces you guys are hiding behind those cameras.
Yeah.
Just so you guys know, I've got little Post-its, and I'm putting little Post-its of what I think they look like on each box. So I hope that's okay with everybody.
I assure you that unmuting your video is better than the Post-it.
I'm just letting you know, your name with the Post-it. It's coming. It's coming.
Sorry to interrupt. Seth.
Oh, there you go.
All right, Abby.
Abby for the win. All right, Eric, I don't want to take any time away from y'all, so have at it.
All good. Take all the time, guys. Good morning. Eric Tysinger here. I had the pleasure of talking with some of you a week or so ago about stage management, production management. We based that a little bit in the Hamilton world with my experience on tour. I'm back this morning to talk a little bit about lighting design. When Seth reached out and said, hey, what do you think about doing this lighting design thing? I said, well, there are enough people that know me well enough to know that we can't bill me as the single host of a lighting designer here.
That's why you're the master technician.
That's a master technician. That's exactly right. Master technician. One of the things that does cross over quite often in the land of stage management is lighting. So I have had the pleasure of working pretty closely with a lot of really awesome lighting designers. The relationship between stage management and lighting designer is pretty big. And if you were here for the management talk, we talked about one of my biggest sort of responsibilities in the load-in or maintenance of a show like Hamilton is in the lighting world. So it's not that I am unfamiliar with lighting design. It's not that I don't know, probably how to talk us through some of it, but I felt like it was important to lean on some colleagues to help me with this, because I think they'll be able to get into some depth and sort of geek out with us a little bit on lighting design that perhaps I'm not gonna be able to do. So the very first call I made, surprisingly, was not Hal Binkley. If you know who Hal Binkley is, he's a lighting designer of Hamilton, Jersey Boys. He's a multi-Tony award-winning lighting designer who is a dear friend, and he would have joined us, but he's not going to give us the insight that Chad Jung, who has joined us, will today. I'm going to turn it over to Chad in just a second, but just to start us off with the cheesy sort of joke question, we'll see who can raise their hand first and give us the answer. Who knows what we have in theater if we don't turn on the lights? Who wants to shout that out? Raise your hand. The first hand I see. What do we have in theater if we don't turn on the lights? You're gonna make me reveal that somebody's trying to raise their hand.
Sophia doesn't know. Ethan doesn't know. Olivia
Come on, we can do it.
Chloe doesn't know.
So the answer to the cheesy joke is wait, Jacob, go get it, Jacob.
Blackout?
Blackout, or also known as radio. Everybody laugh. Theater without lighting is simply radio, folks. It's simply radio.
You and I just aged like 30 years, Eric.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at least Abby's laughing. Thank God she unmuted her video.
I know.
All right. I'm going to get out of the way. I'm going to turn it over to Chad. We're going to literally screen share. We're going to dork out on some lighting talk. I want you to think about questions that you have, because one of the things that I find in this platform that is most helpful is we could talk for a full hour and maybe not address anything that is exciting and anything that motivated you to join us today. So we're going to leave plenty of time for question and answer, and then we'll sort of steer our material from there. So think about your questions, keep them, we'll get to them. I think that's the best way for us to sort of move through the second half of this. In the meantime, I'm going to turn it over to the incomparable Chad Jung. Chad, what you got for us?
Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm happy to be here, and you guys are my first Zoom experience as far as student teacher. Everything else has been really boring meetings. So this is exciting for me. It's like almost going to a show and working on a show, but not really. My name is Chad Jung. I am DFW born and raised. I live in Fort Worth. I was born in Fort Worth. I went to college in Fort Worth. I am the eternal townie. And I'm lucky that DFW is a great airport because I get to fly direct to all the other places that I get to work. It's not so bad. I'm gonna try to share some images. Let's see here. I'm going to hit screen share, and let's see if this works. Share, and then maybe if I start the PowerPoint, that'll be even better. Let's see how this goes. Oh my God, it worked.
Yay, I got you.
Yay! Oh my gosh. I promise it won't be boring text, and I promise this won't be a lecture of any sort, but I find a picture is worth way more than, than me just chatty. So in any case, I started when I was in theory about you guys' age. I was 17 when I did my first lighting design. I did that very young. It was at a place called Kids Who Care, which I would say was fairly equivalent to what most of your high school theater programs are today, because back in the day it wasn't nearly as cool and complicated. But I jumped in because I had a friend who showed me how a gobo fit into a light, and then when he pulled it out, it was red hot and it just looked awesome. And from there, I just kind of went, oh, this is something that I could really do. And I was working with a company that didn't have money for scenic designers and lighting designers. And I just said, well, I'm going to do that stuff. And so I built scenery in my backyard. And I was able to find, I can count on right there. I think I was able to afford 6 gobos. So that was a pretty big deal for me back in the day. But I just jumped right in and I didn't know anything. And I think that it's really important for any of you to know that you should not wait until you know everything to go do it. Jump in and sit and watch and learn and listen. Patience is going to be key as you get through this. But one of the things that really helped me along the way was that I was able to catapult pretty fast into the industry just because I had already done a bunch of stuff as I was moving forward. I grew. I went to TCU. My designs got a little bit better. It ebbs and flows. That's a Godspell that I did. I don't know, however many, 6 years later. And and actually, that's, now that I look at it, that's Jay Johnson, who's another local who's up there on the cross like that. The life that I wanted was to be somebody who could create art, and I always wished I could paint. I couldn't ever make my hands do what my brain saw, and until lighting was introduced to me, it was always frustrating because I could see something in my brain, I could feel it. I just couldn't get my hand to do what my brain wanted, and so I was just constantly copying things down with my hand, trying to trace them and figure it out, and I could never do that. And with lighting, I discovered I could paint a picture with numbers, and numbers also work really well in my brain. And so it just became this kind of seamless integration that I realized I could be the icing on these cakes and work with amazing people to create amazing things. I got really lucky early on in my student life that I hooked up with a theater company that I was one of the co-founders of. It's called Amphibian Stage Productions. It's local now in Fort Worth. At that point, we had kiddos all over the world. World's probably not fair. We had kiddos mainly in LA and New York that were in graduate school and trying to figure stuff out. And so at that point in our lives, we really created some really interesting work that basically had no rules and really allowed us to be artists. And Amphibian's still going today. But the point of that is, look around at who you're with right now. Those people, if you find those artists that are your age, that are learning and seeing the same kinds of things at the same kind of time, that is creating an artistic vocabulary. And it's really important. The way that you can converse especially in live performance, has to be fast because of the amount of time usually that we have in a venue or that we have with the artists. And the quicker you can create that artistic vocabulary with somebody, the better. And the longer you've known them, typically you can go back to, something you did 15 years ago and go, oh yeah, no, I want it more like George Brown. And you just go, oh, okay, great. And on it goes. So look at those people you're with, the people that I started with. Anytime I get to work with them now, it is a seamless communication, and it is something that we get to grow together. So don't always look forward, look right next to you, because the people right next to you may be the people that become your people one day. I was really fortunate in my career. I hooked up very early on with one of my two main mentors, and my friend Tony Tucci is an amazing lighting designer for dance. And I just started assisting him. I started showing up everywhere and anywhere I can. I mean, he lives in Austin. I drove to Austin and would just say, hey, I'm just gonna come sit and watch you focus. And watching and learning on site, this is an apprenticeship style business. And I can't tell you how valuable it will be for you to go out and experience those things. And I promise you, you can get to the places you wanna be to observe. If there's a Broadway show being put up, I promise you there's somebody who's gonna let you come sit quietly in the back and watch a tech. If there is a dance concert happening, I promise you there's a way in, and all you have to do is be humble and open and flexible and just say, hey, I just wanna come sit in the back and be quiet. And I promise you, eventually somebody will notice you and then go, hey, can you go stand on stage for a second? I need to see what that light looks like. And then you'll have a career that will slowly build itself.
Guys, I will say, I'm just going to interject, Chad, one quick story while you're doing that, to give you a good example of we shot last week. We had the pleasure of COVID-19 style shooting the Dallas Summer Musical's High School Musical Theater Awards video portion. We did a shoot. And one of the things that was fascinating about that process is I don't know a ton about movie lighting. But to play on what Chad was talking about, we sort of got some stuff in a room, and we had our director of photography and sort of main camera operator who are very experienced and do this stuff for a living every day, got in a room with a few lights, and they knew that roughly what they wanted was a play on backlight. And so my point is, what Chad's saying is, sometimes you come into a room, you don't know exactly what you're going to do, right? You don't know what's going to happen, but you know that I'm going to rely on some skills that I have learned and some things that I have seen, and I'm going to put a bunch of toys in the sandbox, and then we're going to figure out how to build the sandcastle. And what happened is we played around with the lights in the space that we were filming. We found some really cool things that I don't think we knew were going to happen when we came in. We knew that we needed it to be a strong backlight, and we knew there was some interesting architecture to light, but we didn't know what the final product was coming in. And I think as you all in high school, as you start to develop vocabulary and interactions with your directors and your fellow students, and you start to listen and go, you might find yourself talking about a project, and it might evoke an emotional response that you go, oh, I really want it to feel like X. And sometimes the best way to do that is to just get in a dark room and sort of turn some lights on and see what they do. And then you'll use that skill next time. And maybe you don't have to experiment as much next time because you've done it once, but it might help you find some things that, you don't always know that are there. Sorry for that side interjection. Carry on, Chad.
No, you're
interrupted your brilliance.
No, you're 100% right. And I want to remember what you just said about getting in a dark room in a few minutes, because I think that sometimes we forget how important that is. And I won't say we, I'll say me. I think that there are times in my life where my design gets formulated and very specific to avoiding disaster rather than creating art. And part of that experimental process is something that you have to continually refine for yourself as an artist. So right now, one of the things that I'll say is you have something very unique in that you don't have any rules. And the rules can get in your way in art just as much as they can help you in art. So it's just a really important thing for you to remember. And the other thing I'll say about that too is there's no job too small to get noticed and build a career in this industry.
So true.
One of the things that comes to mind actually looking at Eric is there's an assistant stage manager who's now a very talented stage manager who I first saw operating a tiny camera on stage for a musical, just operating it the whole time. And I went and saw that show, and at the end of that show, I texted the designer and I said, yeah, that was a great show, but who was doing that camera? I could not take my eye off them. They were so focused and so into it. What is their story? And it was a student who then went on to blah, blah, blah. I emailed and said, hey, what's going on? Do you have anything going on? I want to know about your career and how you're building it. There is no such thing as something that is beneath any of us when it comes to creating art. And the people that I know that are always willing to sweep up after are the people that I know that stay working and really create something that's more of a career. Because there is a difference between being a professional artist and being just an artist, because anybody can be an artist. Being a professional
and Chad,
artist, yeah, go for it.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, being a professional artist means that you have to create inspiration when it's not always there. And so there are times as a professional artist that you have to paint a picture whether you're inspired or not, versus an amateur artist that's able to wait for inspiration to arrive and then create art, which is a definite skill set to figure out. What were you going to say, Eric?
I was just going to say, one of the things I'm curious about of our audience here this morning, maybe Jacob or Abby, just because anybody is welcome to raise your hand and jump in to answer this. What's your current journey with lighting design at your school? Jacob, go ahead. How do you guys approach it?
My school, I don't actually have a theater program at my school, but I started a year and a half ago doing lighting for North Texas Performing Arts. So I started just doing, like, they had 1 week summer camps, and I would do the 5-year-olds doing their little show. I would just put a few cues in. So now I'm working with Uptown Players. And then I've also gone with the same company, North Texas Performing Arts, recently. I've been able to work with some larger theaters like Courtyard, MCL Grand, and I just did Newsies, which was definitely my biggest show, and I really enjoyed that, yeah.
That's awesome. Thanks, Jacob. Abby, what about you? What's your experience with lighting design? How do you guys approach lighting design at your school?
So I'm the stage manager at my school. So because of the way, we don't have an auditorium, we just have a black box. So usually all the time that we can get with the light board goes to our lighting technician. And so I first started doing lighting design before I was a stage manager in order to learn more about the tech, because I had never done theater before I was a stage manager. Went right in. So I got a job as a camp counselor at this theater camp in Allen. And it was this teeny tiny little, in a strip mall. And they said, here's the board for our light, our lighting board. We don't know what lights are connected. We don't know anything about this. Figure it out and make a lighting show by the end of the week. So that was where I started.
And that's awesome. And Chad, I'm going down a little path here, just so bear with me.
Path away, man. I love it.
I'm just like I'm jamming now. So Abby, what is interesting about what you just said is something that I wanted to get to, which is, so when someone says to you, create, okay, here's some toys, what is the first, where did you start? Like what, I'm looking for a specific answer, but I'm curious to know, what was the first thing that you said, okay, I've got this pile of stuff, where do I start?
I started by reading the script because it was one that was.
You said it perfectly, Abby. Abby, I want.
Abby, thank God you knew the answer. Thank God you knew it.
I want to make sure everyone here understands that Abby and I did not plan this. That is ultimately the answer I wanted. And Abby, you don't need to say another thing. It was brilliant. You have played your role perfectly, and I didn't even know you were going to do it perfectly. My point is that what we do as artists and as lighting designers specifically, it is absolutely important that we remember that we're starting with the script. And in some cases, it doesn't have to be a script necessarily by words on a paper, but it is, what's the story that's being told?
I call it point of view. I call it point of view.
Point of view. Yeah. Point of view is absolutely right. Mm-hmm. And I'll give you a good example of how simple it can be, but it could be as complicated as, Chad's going to show us some stuff in a second. I was working at Disney World in Florida, and we were tasked with lighting for the rollout of Buick's new series of cars in 2001. This was in late 2000, early 2001. And Buick bought out Disney World. We were at MGM Studios. They were doing their big corporate rollout, and they put probably 7 of their cars throughout the park, and we were tasked with lighting them. Well, in the process of that, there were several conversations that I witnessed where there were folks who wanted to get really artsy with that. There were folks who were having conversations about, hey, maybe we put a template on it. Maybe we put color on it. Maybe we do X, Y, and Z. And one of the things that came out of that meeting that was so interesting to me as a young student was an executive, or let's just call it somebody, it wasn't really an executive, but someone higher up in the chain said, I think we need to remember what we're doing here, which is to feature the car and light the car. And in that case, simpler was better, which was, the notion is, really, we need to light the car from 3 sides, but we don't need to color it because we don't want it to change the product. We don't want to put texture on it because that's not going to really pop the car in the way. And that has stuck with me. Anytime I think about lighting designers and working with lighting designers or lighting stuff that I light myself, is that sometimes you have to remind yourself, what's the point? What are we trying to do here? For example, if you go into a choir concert at your school, and I'm literally making stuff up right now because this is what I go through. I've got a choir on stage and they're doing a really fun song. And I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be great if I could make the stage blue and purple and green and like that, I could do all that stuff? And the answer is yes. Except one day I did that and I was like, I had this really awesome look going. They were singing Don't Stop Believing. I was like, ooh, this like Journey. We got the jam going. We got the purples, the pinks. We're like, And then I looked up and I realized you couldn't see the singers. Well, guess what? Mom and Dad and Grandma Susie and Grandpa Jim are coming to see their kids sing. They're not going to really care what Eric or Chad has decided that's really cool about Don't Stop Believing in the music. Again, remembering what you're trying to do. That was a very long way of saying that. Abby, thank you for playing your part beautifully. Start with the script. And then Chad, back to you. I apologize.
No,
I'm going to mute.
You're absolutely
I'm going to mute because I get excited.
No, I feel like Eric and we could probably sit and just vamp about this kind of stuff and geek out for 6 or 7 hours, which by then there would just be me and you on the Zoom and that would be about it. But you're absolutely right. Point of view is everything. And with a collaborative art form that is very different than, for example, a lighting installation at the Dallas Museum of Art that's typically done by one single point of view, we're often in a situation where we've got a point of view that is our own. We've got a point of view that's a director's. We've got a point of view that's a producer's, a point of view that's a conductor's. all those point of views, as much as we want them to all align, don't always align at the same time. And so you often end up as a conduit for your own ideas, as well as somebody trying out many other people's ideas. It is very difficult to find your artistic voice as you grow, because when you're younger, the different people that are talking to you will all say that they're correct. And the great news is nobody's ever going to be wrong. There's only going to be wrong in this art for a specific person. I promise you, there's no lighting design I've ever seen that I said, that's just wrong. It might be wrong for me, but if it was right for the other person, there's fine. And there's plenty of lighting designs I've done where I went, that's just wrong, but somebody else felt it was the right thing. So it's this constant kind of battle of finding your own point of view, and then also trying to listen and understand other people's and communicate yours, because light is very difficult to communicate with in words, especially if you're working with somebody that is new and you don't have that artistic vocabulary set up yet. I'll show you here. I'm going to share the screen for a second and show you this image right here. Let's do that guy right there. Oh, yay, it worked, yay, look. So this is an example of sharing a point of view that, as simple as it may seem, absolutely communicates what you're trying to do. And it's just a way to start with somebody in terms of the creative process. And anybody can do it. There's no rule to exactly how it's going to happen, and that's proof of it right there, because those are my two kiddos a long time ago.
Hey, Chad, back up one slide.
Yeah.
And I just want to, because this is brilliant. This is 100% everything you want to know about light design. What? Hey, let me just go back. I'm gonna figure out. Myra, are you still there, Myra? Is it Myra? Did I make that up? Myra, are you there?
She's like, I got to figure out how to, oh, there you are. Now you're there. We can hear you.
Hey, Myra.
Hi.
Take a look at this. I want you to tell me, and it's such a simple thing, but I just would love for you to answer rather than me just yammering. What do you think? What do you think Chad and his associates were trying to illustrate with this light cue?
It kind of looks like they were trying to highlight the guy on the top and like make him the center of attention.
Oh my God, you're a genius. And truly, what's awesome about it is it's not like when you go to the next picture and you realize what's happening. It's you can take that concept is you can translate that to any production or any scene.
Absolutely.
And it's literally done with some generic room top light to provide fill in, and then a really strong backlight on the central character. Chad, go ahead. Yep, do anything.
Oh yeah, no, I was. You're absolutely right. And when it comes to, I was just flipping through to try to see if I could find a picture that was going to support what you were saying, but it kept going to some other stuff. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to the way to light something, there's no rule other than your point of view, your team's point of view, and the logistics of your venue. Just because every lighting design is custom does not necessarily mean that every light plot is custom. And especially at your level right now, those limitations can feel tricky, but they can also really lead you down a path to success as you start out. The number of times that I've added toys prematurely to a production are typically because I'm insecure about whatever process is happening. The way that you create custom lighting design has nothing to do with where the lights are. It has everything to do with how you're using them and interpreting them. And I have done shows with 900 lights, and I've done shows with 9 lights, and I would say that both of them absolutely worked artistically for those pieces. And there's no guarantee about what you're going to use. If you haven't seen what a real Broadway show is, not on tour, but in a Broadway theater, if you haven't seen what a real off-Broadway show is and an off-Broadway show, the people who are doing this professionally, who are trying to win that lottery number for their first Broadway show, are doing it in spaces smaller than the ones that you guys are working in and with less equipment. It is a really important thing to remember that your aesthetic and design is not going to be tied to that equipment. And the number of stories I can tell you about lighting designers who are hardcore Broadway lighting designers, and you ask them what their hardest show was, and they say, well, the hardest show was when the third grade asked me to come in and light the choral concert for my son. Like, that's the thing that they're like, I don't even know. And then eventually you realize, oh, everybody's got different levels of scale that they always work in. And your level of scale right now is not going to make your design, nor is it going to break it, because it's different everywhere. Like, there's just no, there's no right or wrong. And anybody who wants to tell you that, have them call me. I'll talk them through it. It'll definitely, yeah, it'll definitely work. Hold on.
Hey, Chad, what do we say? You keep looking. No, you look, and I'm going to say, let's just because we're inside the half-hour mark. Let's ask. Have you guys been thinking of questions? We'll start the hand-raising question and answer session while Chad continues to look at fun stuff, and we'll. If they're not immediate questions, I can prompt a few.
And if there's not immediate questions, I've also got some other stuff that we can go through. I think one of the things that I started with was the idea of interaction in this community. And I know it was really important to me to start with that because I do believe that that's the way that you break in, but we're also in a situation right now where that's not a thing. And we're also about to enter a summer where for many of us, it's not going to be a thing. So one of the other important things that I wanted to share with you guys is just some basic opportunities that are out there in terms of expanding your knowledge so that when we get to have live audiences again, you can come at it with a skill set that is more than you have.
That's awesome.
And so here, I'm going to share let's see here, I'm going to share some.
This is great. So guys, this list that Chad's about to show you are going to be some tools that you can do virtually, essentially, that you can work on at home, you can read about, you can study about. There are some tools to play with, which is really cool.
These are some of my favorite things right now in terms of geeking out with lighting, all of which I feel like are extremely accessible no matter what your skill level. The piece that I just pulled up is there are a number of different websites dedicated to the preservation of just lighting design as an art form. And one of them that I just pulled up, actually what you're looking at is the front of house light plot for Lion King on Broadway. And if you want to go just look at light plots, Broadway light plots are available. Google them, and I promise you will find them on this site. You will find them on Live Design has a whole series of pieces that you can pull up all these PDFs. And I literally taught myself how to draft by looking at plans from a friend of mine, John David, at San Diego Opera. He would send me plans, and I taught myself by looking at his plans and learning how to communicate with drawings. It's a long way to go, and there's no anticipation that you guys should be worried about creating light plots, but I guarantee you it's super fun to see what other people do, and to just try to understand, how they're communicating to a team. And there's so many
positions and the different positions. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
the notion, just looking at this document right here that you have up, guys, there's so much information that you can, even if you don't understand it, it should at least invoke questions. And that sometimes is the best way sort of to start your journey. But that was I just immediately looking at that, Chad, I was drawn to, oh gosh, you could easily look and go, okay, what's a boom look like? Where's he put his booms? Oh yeah, here's a section.
Yeah, and the fun thing about this kind of thing too is also that it gives you a place to jump off and go, I don't understand what these 5 things are. That's when you have a reason to reach out to somebody else and say, hey, what the heck is this? Why? Why would they do this? Because just looking at stuff without having anybody to give context can leave you really overwhelmed and lost. And so you should know that reaching out is completely within your ability. I promise you, if you want to meet your hero, the lighting community is small, you can meet them. I would also encourage you to try to not meet a few of your heroes, so you keep them as these gods that exist, and don't figure out that, yeah, they're all just real people who try to figure it out. I was never more disillusioned when a designer I worked with explained that the Tony that he won was a plot that he did in 30 minutes and didn't really care about. I was like, oh, great. But on the flip side, you know, I've only met Richard Pilbrow a handful of times, and for me, he's the most magical human in the world because I don't really know about his coffee habits or anything else. So reach out to people and find somebody who is your advocate. There are plenty of people out there who want to be your advocate. I think that an ad because very lucky Tony and Marie as my mentors, who both advocated not only for me to learn, but also just for me to have a life and a career. And I feel the extreme need to pass that on to other people. I am not trying to protect my job. I want all of you to do my job better than me. I would much rather go assist you one day if I can. It is my joy to see young people succeed, and something that's really important. Okay, so something else that I think is really cool right now, the ETC's online tutorials are the real deal. I highly recommend them. If you have an ETC console at your school, if you have an EOS, if you have an Ion, if you have a Color Source, if you have any of that line at your school, go take these courses. They have previs built in, and the ones that they've released right now are also the ones that you would pay for to learn other stuff. Right. The training, and actually one of the training series is, I wonder if his picture's on here somewhere. One of the training series is Rob Crane, who's actually local, lives in Dallas, and he is. There he is. Yeah. So
there's
like,
Robbie.
If you have questions, this guy that I'm circling, like
we'll
this
give you
guy right here, yes, he will come. He will come talk to you. I will make sure that he answers a question. Talk to me, Jacob. Talk to me.
I can't say because I'm doing the EDC training right now.
Mm-hmm.
Not the video training, but their actual learning series. They're all free right now because of the quarantine. Mm-hmm. Yep. Also, if you don't have a console, or if you've just worked with them, but like you don't have it at school or something, the software is free. Just make sure your computer can run it if you want like a visualizer with it. But otherwise, it's definitely, I've been doing the training right now, and it's really good.
I have very successfully trained students at your level to become really solid programmers really fast. I've also trained veteran stagehands with the same thing, none of whom had a console in front of them, all of whom were sitting with laptops and computers. And P.S., if you're the person who really wants to learn the console, COVID's happening, somebody can get a console in front of you. Like, if you really want to reach out and you really want to dedicate yourself to learning something, I promise you it is available for you to get a hold of. And especially right now with ETC, they've just released their beta version of their previs software that's about to come out. And I'm to the point right now where I have a student that I love, and I said to her, I said, hey, if you learn that, I will pay you to build me previs theaters and all of my different shows. And I mean, this is a person who is 15 and did that. I also offered that to several of my other assistants. The problem is they all have like really busy jobs, and so really busy jobs. although Chad, fewer right now.
Chad, would you also agree, and maybe Jacob too a little bit? One of the things that that some people can get scared away by if you don't have an Ion or an EOS, or you don't have an ETC console in your space. Mm-hmm. Don't let that shy you away from taking the classes and learning about it for two reasons. One, at some point you're going to come across that console because it's the leading console out there.
Industry standard console. Yeah.
And number two, the concepts that they're going to teach you about dimmers, channels, patching, that language and syntax that they use has to be used in any console you have. It just may look a little different and it may be in a different menu, but it's the same concept. And that is huge in terms of where you are in your development, because you have to sort of learn the building blocks of how a console wants information, so that you can walk up to any console and go, okay, where are the dimmers? How is the signal getting from the dimmers into the board? And then the very first thing I have to do is figure out how to patch. And if you know the EOS family patching language and what it's trying to do, you will be able to translate that to almost any console. You just have to find out how that particular brand uses the language, but it's the same stuff. So don't let it scare you away. The EOS stuff is the easiest to learn, in my opinion, with those training videos. So I would say, go get it. I am Terrell.
I completely agree. I completely agree. Oh, were you about to say I am Terrell? Oh,
I was just gonna say, I wasn't gonna say bad things. I was just gonna say, what's interesting about that space is they decided to not put an ETC family console in that space, at least not yet. I am still
it'll be
lobbying.
there. It'll be there in a year. If it's not there in a year, I'll go find money and we'll make 4 with ISD take care of it.
I took a tour of the space. I'm about to give them mine and get a new one. But I took a tour of the space, and what was interesting, the reason I mentioned it is I walked up and I got to the booth and I saw it was a Strand console, and a Strand console that I had not used and new to me. But I immediately started doing exactly what I just described to you, which was, okay, poking around that console to figure out how it wanted me to give it the same information that an Ion would want. And all of a sudden I found myself like, okay, I get it. This is how it deals with moving lights, and this is why it's harder to use than an ETC console. And this is a cool feature that maybe I won't hate. So anyway, just real world example.
The important thing to say here, number one, I am Terrell's amazing. If I will go sleep in a tent if I have to try to get my sons in there if they choose to pursue art or STEM. And also, every different manufacturer of light boards has a reason they do things a certain way. And the thing that ETC has done differently than many other manufacturers is they've developed software over about 20 years that they continue to really commit and service themselves with in a way that allows students to go from I know nothing to I can program a Broadway show. And that stepping point from one up to the next is rare in most consoles. Grand Demays are awesome. Strand consoles have amazing things that can't be done on other consoles. Those are more specialized consoles. And with that, what I usually say is, oh, great, you have a Grand Demay. I love it. As long as you know it, great. Let's do it. You need somebody, you want somebody who breathes that language because, you know, Grand Demay, it is a wonderful language. It's just a language that's different. And if you don't speak it, then you need an interpreter to help you out.
To help you get it. Abby, what's your question, honey? Go for it.
Oh, I was just back to the, like, if you don't have a board, our, before my before I was there, our school
hang on one
like,
second, Abby. You went
and did not have a board.
Abby, hang on. Abby,
you turned into a robot.
You went R2D2 on us for a second. Start over one more time.
Sorry. Before I was involved in our theater program, we did not have a light board at all at our school, and my director would have their lighting technicians, before they would go to competitions for one act, put beans on the table for the dimmers, and she would just push beans to practice, and they would still go in like competitions and win awards. So
that's, it is not about
same concept.
There's no right or wrong for sure. The important thing to know is to be an advocate for yourself, because when I was your age in high school, there was no light board. I mean, the light board was, it was similar. You'd feel like, oh, okay, it's just switches we turn on and off. When I got to college, there were no moving lights. I had to be an advocate for myself to learn in both of those situations, to be able to say, I need to be learning things that not only help you today, but that help me when I leave school. And that is a really important thing to learn about yourself, because people do want to help you. And I promise, if there's one person that is a roadblock, there are many other people around that person and above that person sometimes that will very easily help you become an advocate for your education, because this is what it's about. You're teaching yourself to learn. If you can learn a light board, you can learn any light board because you figure out the tools. I promise you, I can sit down with just about any PDF manual and get to know a light board really fast.
Pretty quick,
but
yeah,
it's
I agree.
because I speak the common language, because they do all have a little bit of a common language. I just shared with you on our screen.
Yeah. This is awesome. What is this? I don't even know this.
So this is the newest beta software that ETC, it'll become ETC 3.0. So EOS 3.0, Augmented is in beta right now. I'm just happy I'm allowed to talk about it, because there was a time where I wasn't allowed to like tell anybody it was coming. It is going to be a game changer, especially for people at your level. And by the way, I count people at your level with a number of other professional theaters. There's only so much anybody can learn. And this is just an older demo that I'm just going to turn on and show you. But essentially, it allows you to create your space in previs, and it allows you to create your space very simply, so that you can actually put your lights there, turn them on, see where they're going to focus. It's not about the art, but it does help tremendously with the logistics. And for any of you who haven't gotten into the deeper realms of moving lights, it also really allows you to focus moving lights with a click of a button. And it takes what, would take you 20 minutes. It takes you about 20 seconds. So, and it's free. This is the important thing. It's free for you. It's free for everyone. So that software is completely free. It is available to you, and there are people who want you to use it. And there is training online for you to learn it. Talk to me, Jacob.
I will say, if you're interested in learning it, if you have any questions about it, they have the beta forms. And I've already been on there a few times, and I've gotten responses in less than 10 minutes. And it doesn't matter if it's a question based off of your operating system on your computer, or if you're running the beta on a console, whatever it is, you can get it answered.
It's one of the great things. It's one of the reasons I don't work for ETC, but I love them as a company. They invest heavily in training and education. And
Agreed.
that, for me as a lighting designer, what that does is it allows me to continue to build my art, knowing that the resources are available for my team to support. And the resources are available for you because the number of programmers who keep programming past 25 is fairly low, because eventually you get asked to do something else that you know how to do really well. And so those young programmers are something that we need to keep building and replenishing. And ETC does a really amazing job taking care of that. There are so many YouTube resources, not just for ETC, by the way, but for just about any console. And if you've got a console that you really can't figure out, I promise you there's somebody who will either help you figure it out or will help you find a new console. It will, and I'm not talking about from a sales perspective, I'm talking about from an educational, logistical perspective. Sometimes it just takes reaching out to the right person in the industry and saying, hey, how do we talk to these people and let them know that I'm not able to really educate myself the way I want? Because they're all in the game to get you to be a better human. And sometimes, you can't do that without the right tools. It's just a thing for sure. This software is going to be amazing. If you go the route of playing around with Augmented, remember, beta is not released. Beta is bugs. Beta is figuring things out and helping the programmers find the holes. If you don't go Augmented, that software is strong. It will run on just about any machine you've got, and it is free. So if you want to learn how to program an Ion or an EOS or a color source, any of those guys, I mean, I could do it via Zoom with 10 minutes a day with you, and then you doing some online tutorials and you'd be there. Because really the only thing missing in what they've provided to you is the ability to ask questions of why. Because there's plenty of things that they'll teach you that you will have no idea why you would ever
why it works the way it does.
Right.
Chad, thank you for that. That is super duper exciting. Let's go. Let's see, where are we at? We're 10 minutes out. Okay, so all right, questions. Now it's important. Now we're going to either be quiet and just stand here and look at each other oddly, or Seth's going to ask questions, or you're going to come up with some questions. Feel free to jump in. You can type them. You can wave your arms. Seth, you can ask.
While you're thinking of questions, I'm going to share one more thing with you, because especially for Jacob, I feel like this is probably already something you know about, but for anybody else, it is a real awesome thing. Once you get to the point where you feel like you're ready to really program, ETC has now released a new program called On Headset that literally gives you a recording of a Broadway lighting designer lighting a show, and you program that show for that designer. And Ken, I promise you, is a hardcore designer when it comes to requiring things from his programmers. So they've taken it to yet another level where not only do you know the how, but half of the reason that programmers are so well paid and so desired is because of the at which I can say, I need this, this, and this, and the programmer at the Sydney Opera House
can translate it.
30 moving lights all at one point that's this big in about 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And, other people might take 4 hours.
That's awesome, dude. That's great.
So it is a solid get. You should totally go check it out.
I'm going to go check it out. I didn't even know that existed. I love Ken.
Yeah, no, it's really cool.
Okay, I'm looking for hands, looking for questions. Let's see. Seth, do you have any? Oh, hang on. Maybe there's one. Oh, yeah.
I do. So I wanted to ask, how has your lighting design experience helped you out outside of the theater world? Whether it is like with other day jobs or just with life in general. What have you pulled from that theatrical experience?
I think that it's one of the raps that I do about being a lighting designer is this description of basically I'm an artist, I'm an architect, and I'm a business. And one of the most important things is that for most independent contractor lighting designers, not only are you an artist and an architect, but you're running your own small business. And so I absolutely know that those elements have translated into my life in a bunch of ways, just in terms of making sure I really understand what's happening and how to financially stay stable, not only for myself as a business, but for my family with our mortgage payments. It's one of the reasons that right now in this crisis, I've got till September before I start to get really worried. And part of that is because it was made clear to me early on, this is a business and you are your own business if you're going to be an independent lighting designer.
And Chad, would you say one of the things that I think is always, I hammered this, some of these that have heard me say this before, but you could probably confirm it. Yeah. The set of people skills that you develop as a lighting designer, how integral are they outside of the walls of the black box?
They're huge, and they are a constant. For me, I think that there are some designers that it comes really naturally, but for me, it's a constant thing I work on, and it translates as I grow in being able to really listen, because listening is a huge skill that is highly undervalued in our profession. The ability to work well under pressure. COVID's been really hard for me because there hasn't been quite enough pressure to get my brain to like kick into gear. And there are just so many people skills that you have to do because, like, for example, the last show that I did right before the pandemic hit was in a brand new theater with a completely new team. I had never worked with any of them. I had one singer on stage that I had lit before and a director from out of the country, blah, 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 blah. The people skills are almost more important than the design, because if I can't find trust with my team before we get into the room, it is lost time and something that's really important. And that translates to my marriage, that translates to me with my kids. And it's a constant thing. There is nothing that can create trust beyond just putting in the time. And one of the hardest things for me has been to be able to reach out frankly, in a very vulnerable way to team members that I don't know and really try to find some commonality before we get into a room, because trying to find trust with somebody when you're in a room with 40 other people who are being paid hourly, that's a tough mountain to climb.
So we have time for one more student question. Any of y'all have any questions?
Come on, somebody's got a good one.
Including any of the people who we cannot see.
Yeah. You don't have to. You can just type your question. We won't make you
I mean, John Wick. I can speak for John Wick because John Wick is actually my son. I have his Zoom account up here as my backup in case for some reason my internet fails. So, I can speak for him to say he's got no questions. You've already seen a picture of him when he was much younger. He's, I'm sure, adequately embarrassed.
I love it. Anything else, guys? Anything you're dying to know about lighting design? We probably have something to say about it.
That's true. That's true. I will, while we're thinking about those things, I'm going to share a screen because I just, think it's fun to see other imagery. Here, let's see if I can do that, because we can watch this while we're talking, because it's not that.
And guys, while he's doing that, I'll say that, fun practice things that you can do in terms of sharpening skills, and reading scripts and thinking about how you would light them is a good way to sort of sharpen your interpretation skills and script analysis. Listening to music is a very interesting way to see what it evokes in you. You'll start to hear mood and emotion in music, and you might start listening to a piece of music and think, okay, what if I were to put this piece of music into a color, what would it be? If I were to texture this piece of music, what would that texture look like? They're fun exercises that don't require anything other than, your computer and your brain.
I light concerts in my brain all the time.
There you go.
I get to light. I light a lot of live music, but I rarely light a lot of what would be considered popular modern music. And so for me, I spend a lot of time listening to music, and my fingers are literally doing light cues as I'm listening. And as students, you should invest even more in that, because it will build you a career. There's a really awesome, I'll have to see if I can find it. There's a really awesome YouTube channel that is a student who has just been building models of current Broadway shows. They're not models that he was, like at first I thought, oh, that's just the guy who builds all the cool models for the Broadway shows. No, he's trying to build a career by literally going in, examining shows, building real models of those shows and putting them online, so that one of those scenic designers will see it and go, I need that guy to build my model for the next Broadway show.
Chad, here's a good question. Here's a good question from Chloe, who says, Chad, has there ever been anything that you, jumped on me, that's all good. Has there ever been anything that you thought you could not do, but ended up really enjoying?
Oh, God. All the time. One of my favorite quotes that I couldn't read to you off the top of my head is basically about lighting design, and how on every single show you go in and you work for a few days and you look at it and you think, this is going to be the moment that they realize I have no idea what I'm doing, that I'm just making it up, that I'm just trying to figure it out. This is going to be the show. They're going to realize I'm a fraud, and they're going to send me packing and go away. And the quote goes on to say, and the next day I come in and I refocus, and the next day I re-cue a little bit, and then it's okay. And it just ends with, it's okay. It's not great, because there is something about a lot of designers I work with that because we're doing live art, it's almost never done. There's almost always something, because when you're doing something live, the timing changes just a little bit, or you've replaced an actor with somebody else and they do that just a little bit differently and you want it to feel a little bit more. It is this live growth of art that can't be stopped. And yeah, there are a lot of things that I have thought I'll never be able to do that. This last show that I did a bunch of, here, I'll pull up a picture. I had these beautiful renderings And I remember during the one of the production meetings, the TD looked, and we were on Zoom, and he's like, yeah, but like, you're not gonna be able to do this. And I just like literally, and I just laughed, and I was like, yeah, no, these are totally impossible. This is what I wish I could do, because basically the physics of the windows wouldn't allow us to create the textures that that the scenic designer really envisioned. I came at it in 50 different ways, some expensive, some free. And in the end, we got it done, and we got it done to the point where the final image and the rendering, they were pretty darn close. And also, let's see, I'm looking for my.
I think we're just out of time.
If we're out of time, that's fine. Hey, I'll keep talking forever, so just call me later, like.
Chad, thank you.
I won't return your call for like 6 days. It's fine.
And we can definitely include any of these in the links below once we make this this masterclass available on YouTube. Thank you, Eric and Chad, for teaching the course. This was super informative. I learned a lot. Super excited to see what our students get out of this moving forward. Thank you, students, for participating and watching. Remember that Dallas Summer Musicals is here for you. If you ever need anything, send us an email, leave us a comment below. We can definitely help you out. We have tons of really great e-content, e-learning series available to you on the Dallas Summer Musical YouTube page. Be sure to check those out. And if you have any suggestions for masterclasses that you want to see, let us know too, because we definitely take that into consideration. But yeah, other than that, thank you all.
Next week, I'll be cooking in the kitchen for something completely different. Thank you all so much. So good to see you all.
Yes.
Stay safe. See you soon.
Bye, everybody.